I want your table, even though it's yours. I deserve it. Okay, so this happened the day before Christmas Eve. My coworkers and I had all decided to go out to eat together, as kind of a company Christmas dinner. We chose a popular chicken restaurant that specializes in chicken and signature sauces. Not going to say the restaurant's name as I don't know the rules about that. As luck would have it, it was my day off on the day we'd all decided to go out, so I decided to make my way up there early to try and secure a table, since it was the holidays and I knew it would be really busy. I was right. The restaurant was rammed, every table occupied and a queue of at least 15 people waiting in the entrance to be seated. I noticed there was only one table in the restaurant that would be big enough to seat our party, a large booth that was near the entrance, and so decided to ask an employee about reserving the table for later, since my colleagues wouldn't get off work for at least another hour and that was more than enough time for the family already seated to finish their meal. I was told that I could reserve the table, but I had to stay in the restaurant, so I accepted, sat down and played on my phone for an hour. I was keeping an eye on the table the whole time, paranoid that someone would just swoop in and take it if I wasn't paying attention. It was really loud, and, being a restaurant, also really warm, and I'd been approached by more than one employee asking if I had been served or if I was waiting for something, since I guess a few noticed I had been here a while, while every other person was being seated around me. Finally, the family left and the table was cleared, and the hostess came over to offer the table. I was so relieved I practically skipped to sit down, feeling reassured that the table was now mine. Or so I thought. About 10 minutes go by and that's when I heard it. Excuse me? It was a woman's voice, not one I recognized. I froze at first, but didn't look up, positive she had to be talking to an employee since I was seated right next to the door, and the entrance where the hostess worked. My hope was quickly dashed when another, less patient, "Excuse me?" sounded closer to my ear. I quickly looked up, startled to find a woman perfectly fitting her snooty voice looking down at me. She was older, maybe around 40 or 50, a little overweight, short blonde hair, bright red lipstick. Essentially, an alarm bell to anyone who had ever worked any form of retail. Yes, I replied, a little cautiously, since I didn't know what she wanted. She was smiling, and she didn't look dangerous, so I tried to dismiss my alarms. Funny how I always do that right before I'm about to get trouble. Would you mind moving to a smaller table? This is the biggest table they have and I've got a big family. You're sitting here all on your own. Would you mind? Now, if I had been sitting on my own, I probably would have given the table up, but A, I wasn't, and B, there were other medium to large families who had been waiting to be seated before these people even came in. I knew they couldn't have been here long because I was keeping an eye on the door waiting for my coworkers to arrive. So one of those parties would be more entitled to the table than this lady's family who had to have just walked in. I didn't say any of this though, since she was being polite and it did look rather strange me sitting in a 12-seater all alone. So, I merely smiled apologetically at her and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm actually waiting for my friends to turn up. We've got a lot of people so I really need this table." I thought I'd been nice enough, but the woman didn't seem to like my reply. Her face immediately soured. "Well, that's not fair. I tried to make a reservation for this table over the phone and I was told I couldn't. You shouldn't be allowed to reserve a table if I wasn't." I was shocked at the turn of her attitude, but as I work in retail, you could say I've developed rather a thick skin for people like this. I just continued to look up calmly as I said, "Ma'am, I've been waiting for this table for an hour. I was told I could only reserve the table if I stayed in the restaurant, so I've been here for an hour waiting. I can't move to a smaller table. I'm sorry." I wasn't actually sorry. Maybe she caught on to that because she huffed and stormed off. I thought that was the end of it. Will I ever learn? A few minutes later I hear her voice again. The restaurant was still loud and busy, so I knew she had to be close for me to hear her at all. I look up and sure enough, she's standing super close to my table, talking heatedly to a man in the restaurant uniform, who was casting sideways glances at me the whole time. Crap, I thought, fully prepared to fight for this table. I had waited longer than anyone else in line and I wasn't giving it up without a fight, not even to an entitled brat that thought she and her huge party could show up to a restaurant, in the middle of a shopping high street, in the evening, during the holiday season, and just magically expect to be seated before everyone else. I tried to convince myself that maybe she wasn't talking about me and she was just trying to get a table put together for her family. But that hope was quickly dashed when the employee came over to me, annoying lady in tow, with her hands on her hips and everything like I was a naughty child about to be reprimanded. The guy smiles sympathetically. "Miss, I understand you've been waiting here a while." He must have seen me sitting in the waiting area all that time. "But would you mind waiting just a little longer to be seated at a smaller table? I could even speak to the manager about getting your meal compensated for you." He looked tired, and like he really wanted me to accept just to get this obnoxious lady out of his hair. And, if I had been on my own, I probably would have taken him up on the offer, but I wasn't alone. My coworkers would likely show up in the next 10 minutes or so, and if I didn't keep this table, we'd all have to hunt for somewhere else to eat. They had been working all day, and I'd come down here early just so they wouldn't have to stand by the entrance for an hour so they could eat their food. So, heart heavy for this poor bloke who I would be causing more trouble for, I simply explained, "Sorry, but I'm actually waiting for a group of friends. They're all getting off work soon, and I came here early to get a table. I need this table." He looked like he understood, and was resigned to his fate to deal with the pushy lady behind me. I'm sorry ma'am, but she did reserve this table. I'd be more than happy to have some smaller tables put together for you and your family once they're available. If you wouldn't mind waiting, we'll have you seated as soon as we can, the man said, almost unbelievably polite. Seriously, I wished I could be that patient when dealing with hoity-toity customers. Yet, despite the poor guy's pleasant manner and his reasonable offer, pushy lady still wasn't satisfied. When I called to reserve a table I was told that I couldn't. It's not fair that she, looks down her nose at me, can reserve a table when I couldn't. My family has kids. We need a big table. Oh lady, you did not just use the "I have kids so I'm entitled to special treatment" tactic. The man merely replied, I'm sorry again ma'am, but she had the table first, and she's been waiting for it. As I said I'd be more than. Pushy lady cuts him off. I don't want to wait for small tables. I want this table. She shouldn't be allowed to hold it for her friends. She's here alone and we're a big party. Go get your manager if you won't do anything. The poor guy meekly agrees and goes to get his manager. Pushy lady stomps back to her large family, and I mentally start biting my nails. They won't honestly make me move, will they? I wanted to tell myself that they wouldn't, but I had a feeling if the woman put up enough of a fuss they'd make me move just to shut her up. Then, by the grace of the sun, moon and stars, I see my first colleague walk in, followed by another, then another, and finally, the full party of I think 10, finally comes through and sits down. I am so relieved. There's no way anyone can make me move now. They're all laughing and joking. Most thank me for getting the table and I get filled in about what happened at work that day. I don't tell them about pushy lady, and just relax into the comfort of not being on my own, happily joining the discussion about what everyone would order. A few minutes later, out of the corner of my eye I see pushy lady talking rather angrily to another woman, who I presumed was the manager, the worker guy by her side, taking small sideways glances at us but most definitely not looking like she was going to march up and force us out of the precious table pushy lady wanted so badly. Sucks to be you, pushy lady. Maybe next time you should show up early. Now I guess you'll have to wait like everyone else. I didn't hear anything about her or from her for the rest of the evening, and it was a great night. And it really was a great table.